Hello everyone, welcome to Lemon Code 21. This time we will discuss Golang Viper. Viper is a popular configuration management library in Go. It helps developers manage application configurations in a flexible and user-friendly way. Viper can handle different formats, such as JSON, YAML, TOML, HCL, and more. Several agendas that we will discuss. Introduction Viper. Every time we create an application, we certainly will not hard-code the application configuration in our program code. For example, the configuration of a connection to a database or something similar. This is because each place to run the application we create may have a different configuration. For example, on our computer, on a server, or on someone else's computer. This means that the application we create needs to have the ability to retrieve configuration data from outside the application so that the contents of the configuration can be changed dynamically. Viper is one of the popular Golang libraries for configuration management. Viper supports many types of configuration files, such as JSON, YAML, and V files, properties, etc. Create Project Viper. Okay. Now let's first create a Golang Viper project by writing a few commands. First, type Go mode init project name. And add the Viper and commit library. Okay, next we create a test file. We create a test Viper function. Then add viper.new, which is used to create a new instance of Viper. This allows us to manage configurations independently within the application. We make an assert to carry out a value test. This test ensures that new instances of Viper are created successfully without errors. If we do the test, then it is successful. Let's continue with the material. JSON. Viper can be used to read configuration from JSON files. Now we will try to create a JSON file, then read the contents of the configuration using Viper. Now we create a second folder. We'll try to read the JSON file with Viper. Next, we create a test file by creating the first init-config function. In this function, there will be a process of calling parameters from the JSON file with the help of the Viper package. We create a JSON file. Here I have prepared the parameters. Let's just copy them. There are parameters that will later be called by Viper. The init-config function is used to initialize the application configuration using Viper to facilitate configuration management. Initially, viper.setConfigName with parameter input configs is used to set the name of the configuration file to be read, namely config, no extension. Then viper.setConfigType with parameter input JSON is used to determine the configuration file type, which in this case is a JSON file. Next, viper.addConfigPath with parameter.adds the current directory.input as the location where Viper will look for the configuration file. Once the basic configuration is set up, viper.readInConfig is called to read the configuration file. If an error occurs during the reading process, the if block will catch the error and print an error message using log. Fatal, which also stops the application execution. Next, we create a test.json function that will be built into unit tests using Viper. First, we call the init.config function that we have created. Tips for creating variables based on parameters in the YAML file. First, the variable app name takes the string value of the app name parameter. For the string value of the parameter in the file, we use the viper.getString function. Both port variables take integer values from the port parameters in the file. Thirdly, create a debug variable taking a Boolean value from the debug parameter in the file. Next, dpost, dabapor, and debuser access the configuration from the database subcategory, respectively getting the host, port, and database username. Next, the function prints all the values obtained using fmtprint. This includes information such as the application name, app name, port, debug mode, debug, database host, database.host database port, database space, port, and database username, database. Username. This test helps ensure that the application can properly access and read the configuration from the prepared JSON file. We will try the following test, the results of which are all the values in the YAML file parameters can be retrieved. YAML. Apart from JSON, Viper can also be used to read files in YAML format. The way to use it is the same as when using JSON. Okay, next we will try reading the YAML file. We just create a YAML file with the same parameters as the JSON file. To do the same testing, we just use the previous coding. We just copy it. The difference is only changing the YAML file name and the setConfigType function. If we try to run it, the result is that we can read the YAML file with the Viper package. env. Viper can also be used to read files in env format. In some frameworks, sometimes many use this format. Well, for reading .env files, it's actually the same too. First, we create a .env file for the parameters. We just match them to before. We create a test file. The code is the same. We just change the config name and config-type functions to config-file.env. Don't forget to change the input parameters when getting data according to the parameter names in the .env file. Now, let's just try to test the file. If we look at the results, we can read the parameters in the file. Environment variable. Sometimes when running an application, we save the configuration using environment variables that are in the operating system we use. By default, Viper will not read data from environment variables. However, if we want, we can use the automatic-env method to read from environment variables. Other features. Actually, Viper can be used to read from other types of configuration files, for example, ACL Hasacorp configuration language, properties, Java properties file, remote config. Viper can also be used to read configurations from remote/servers contained in the application, console, and etc. Okay, that's the discussion about using Viper Golang to read files, which are generally used for configuration.